the cash crisis worse. Talking about Venezuela once again.
Systemic important banks. They removed the one factor and do this thing called monetary awareness.
All right. Good morning. Yeah, a lot of news. $50 silver. Here we are for the third time. And so I definitely had to do a live stream just to give you a glimpse at what history is telling us. And definitely every single pump we had before resulted in some type of market, global, systemic event. And will this third time be any different? I doubt it. So I wanted to take my time and just share with you a couple things here, just to signal how I believe that this time it is different for a variety of reasons. But more importantly, you have the currency, which is ultimately the debt, and the governmental distractions and everything else. It's just too much to not touch on this morning. So definitely looking forward to sharing my thoughts. And so for those who are plugged in, I want to definitely welcome you. Make sure you let me know where you're watching from if you are so bold and so courageous to do such. Definitely would love to share my 2 cents and get your guys' take on a variety of things. So we're going to make this a very informative and lively live stream. So we got Vu Tran taking this as 51, got it to 51, yep. And 87, 2011, 100% history, boy. We are living in historical times. And I try not to make fun of it, but it's one of the things where how can you not pay attention to it? So make sure I'm streaming everywhere if I can. And we will make the most of this experience that we're having. All righty. Okay, so let me just keep it moving. Man. Okay, let me keep this party moving. All right, so let's get into. I got a couple headlines here, a couple things I want to point out, and just navigate through these interesting times that we're in. But for those who are awake and aware and have been preparing as far as taking possession, you are better off than the majority that have no clue as to what's happening. So on the screen here, as you can see, this is what we're looking at right now. This is what we're looking like early morning. And of course, when the Crimex opened, they attempted to slam down silver, but they couldn't do it. But then gold, they got it down just a tad bit. But with it being $51 and climbing, of course, there's a lot of scrambling right now. There's people literally in Europe, in New York, you name it, anywhere that they supposedly hold gold. Chicago, they are trying to figure out what to do. Or perhaps there's a different way of looking at this. Perhaps this letting go of the metals is intentional. That is also something we should consider, just because with all the digital stuff that's in play. Of course, I got some headlines because there's no way that all this metal activity could happen with there not being something to counter that, or to distract, or to divert attention away from. And it looks like the Treasury Secretary happens to have something floating out there about the strategic reserve. No mention of silver from his mouth, to my knowledge. But it doesn't surprise me. Okay. Let me stop playing around. Let's have some fun with it. So let me get into what's happening, man. Feel free to leave some thoughts, ideas, suggestions as to what you guys are thinking. We got Martin checking in. Appreciate you. That's good. Hearing your mic, I agree. They're all different. It's masses recognizing evil personified by those in authority. 100%. We got Faith checking in. How you doing? We got Chad checking in. Hello, truth teller, brother of the kingdom of God. May the Lord bless you and keep you. 100%, man. 100%. Definitely. I put the daily devotional on the community tab. And for those who want that good news this morning, that is the ultimate good news. But with these here, I just want to jump straight to the point, focus on the headlines, share my 2 cents around the primary subject matter, which happens to be the rethinking of the dollar and rethinking of fiat. And of course, we have more of the narrative about the debasement trade. It's not a debasement trade. It's a debasement dump. Literally, it's, redeeming fiat for something true, tried, and tested. Not too hard to believe. Okay, so let me stop rambling because how I do. I can just go on and on and on. But I want to get into some of the headlines and share my 2 cents on it. So let's just jump right into it. So the very first one I want to touch on. From Zero Hedge, here we got on the screen. As you guys can see, it says debasement trade lifts silver above $50 for the first time since the 80s. Hunt Brothers squeeze. And so once again, just going back, as you guys can see here, we were around that time frame, close to 50. And of course, it depends on where you're looking at. I mean, I remember back in the day, that's when I literally caught wind of silver and started my journey down the monetary literacy pathway. And yeah, it's been interesting ever since. But let's get into it. It says the last few months has been goes toward a record high of 4,000 amid the so-called debasement trade, with investors flocking to the perceived safety of alternatives while pulling away from major currencies. So just this headline itself, the debasement trade, the so-called debasement trade, with investors flocking to the perceived safety. Okay, yeah, perceived. I wonder if China and Russia and the BRICS and all those other nations that's been de-dollarizing consider it perceived safety at this point. It's a monetary regime change. If market participants are trading anything, it's getting rid of a fiat currency. Its denominator, stupid. That's their little commentary, for a store value, and we're seeing it in spades with Bitcoin and gold. And so this is the whole Liberation Day announced by this current administration. With the gold to silver ratio. And since that time frame, however, quietly on the side, silver has been outperforming gold. So literally, since the day of liberation by this administration, we've seen that gold to silver ratio go from a peak of 105 down to 82. And it's nowhere near where it should be. That is the good news. That's why literally seeing 50 can be exciting, but it's still early given where things have to go. And what's going to really, I believe, accelerate the direction of where silver and gold and, of course, the digital space will have to go is because of what will come after they admit that they've lost control or given up control for the sake of reshuffling the deck so that they can steer the masses into that preferred outcome, which, of course, we all know is digital. And so just to keep going on this article here, just to share my 2 cents. I think it's always good to get a somewhat interesting perspective. But it says Citadel's Ken Griffin has said investors are starting to view gold as a safer asset than the dollar, a development that's really concerning to the billionaire investor. And then it just goes on to show here the flight to $50 here. And then it gives a historical viewpoint of what I just showed you guys a moment ago. We got the Hunt brothers in the 80s that kicked it off. And then it says the EU debt crisis. But of course, we know that has a lot to do with Lehman Brothers and the issues that we experience here because of the subprime lending that went belly up. And after every one of these major circles here, an event followed, suppression lingered under both. And now the question is that, will we see, and I would never say it's not possible. Never doubt the monetary manipulators because they've been doing this for hundreds of years. It's the governing forces that have suppressed truth and disguised it as hope and hype through a variety of mediums, tricking people into thinking that there is a person in a suit at a podium that can actually bring truth, righteousness, and justice to free humanity. That won't happen the way that they would like for it to. So I would never say going to 50. They couldn't get it down below 50 and perhaps suppress it for a little bit longer. But then again, I don't think they want to do that just because, as I mentioned, the primary focus is to steer people towards the digital stuff. So I believe that they think that they can have it all go up together and it not put them in a position where people end up going backwards. And the reason I say that is because if you look at, me, I follow a variety of sectors. And if I look at my X account right now, look at all the activity that's trending, that's being shown to me according to the algorithms, I'm still seeing more digital asset space stuff, crypto in particular, Bitcoin in particular, than I am anything else, especially silver. And so I'd imagine it could be the same way for you, depending on how the algorithms play. But what will be great and what will be genuine and what will be a very authentic movement for every single person that has experienced the dangers of relying upon this instrument here, which is all of humanity, to place priority in the physical first, and then everything else on top of that is as the icing of the cake if you needed to. Meaning silver has always been the people's money. All of those in the Bitcoin community know importance of gold and silver. But because of the excitement and because clearly my suspicion would be at this point in the midst of a reset to still be pumping and promoting a single item lets me know that you may not have a position in anything tangible and real and physical that is important to you to where you would want to shine attention on it, because most of the focus has been for the last 5, 6, 7 years. So a majority of the people that's new to the crypto space is to focus on the digital, which is their Bitcoin bag, Ethereum bag, whatever you got. And they're solely either content creators or individuals in general, aka maxis, solely focusing on Bitcoin. And the fact that it's now institutionally approved, they have products and services around it, and our government appears to be excited about it. And so to not mislead, but to not be well-rounded. Because if you're really trying to protect yourself from debasement and fiat currency, you want to have a little bit of everything, more than likely. But why not tell people to get the most affordable thing that has always been something your grandparents used to work for, when literally, go back 100 plus years ago, when a day's wage could have been $1 or $2, a token, a real dollar, like a Morgan dollar, a silver dollar, that type of money. And just mention that, we're going to go all the way to the top with this. We're going to take silver, gold, and Bitcoin with us because we want to make sure we keep people mindful of what is true. Tried and tested. It's the resources that come from the ground, first and foremost. But then again, I can't expect that. That's asked for too much. Okay. But you get my drift. You get my drift. Okay. So let me keep it going. Just having a little fun this morning. And so where do we go from here is going to be the question. And so, of course, they had to bring in what's happening in Japan right now. The JPY tumbles as silver topped $50. So it's going to be lots of interesting developments unfolding as a result of $50 silver. Of course, we're going to have the backwardation. Futures contracts literally are not pricing in that. So people are literally wanting physical now and saying the hell with silver in the future because I need it now. Why? Because something is happening, something is broken, and I need physical. And so it says, Adam says, Canada went off silver money in 68. What a coincidence that a good chunk of the developed nations went off of silver around the same time, the 60s more than likely, just like majority went off gold early part of the 20th century. And here we are today. And everybody was forced into fiat after 71, officially, because of the dollar. Okay. But then again, Switzerland was last. I think it was like, 90s. Switzerland went off a quasi gold standard. Okay. But more headlines. Let me give you some more. This time it's different, people. This time it is different because of what the world is up against. We're up against a variety of forces. And for the U.S. being the world reserve currency, this is what I think matters the most because we've never witnessed anything of this nature all at the same time. And so let me just share with you what I mean by that. So if we were to consider where we're at now, given the forces that make this a very unique experience. Give me a second. Let me bring this over here. So here on the screen, this is what makes this extremely different. So if you see here, we have total public debt. And mind you, this is from the Fed, from the Federal Reserve, but it's a quarter behind. So it says we're at 36 trillion. But then again, we all know if you look at the debt clock where we're really at 37 trillion and counting, but I'll just play with their numbers. So literally you go back to that visual aid I just showed you a moment ago of the last time the first time silver saw a surge. The public debt back during this time frame here was $877 billion. $877 billion around 1980 Q2 when the Hunt brothers did what they did. We had coming out of the 70s stagflation and all the things that took place. And there was $877 billion to our national debt. That's something that is, was shocking at the time, but give or take now, look where we're at. Then you factor in M2, base money, ready money, checks, savings, you name it. In 1980, it was $1.5 trillion. $1.5 trillion. Here we are today. Let's just go out to where we're at today. How much M2 is in circulation? If I get my thing on the screen here, we're looking at, as it says here, 22.19 trillion. So from 1.5 to 22 trillion is what the world is up against, of what we're up against as individuals that base our entire financial lives upon this instrument here. Okay. And so in between there, we had the great financial crisis that took place at around 2010, 2009. We know what happened. M2 was 7.9 trillion. 7.9. So from 7.9 up to 22. And let's just take a look at the national debt at that time. It was about $9 to $10 trillion. So from 80 to 2010, that 30-year time frame, we saw a almost 10x, 12x, give or take ish of the monetary base. Debt definitely 10, 12. And so here from that second event we experienced when gold touched or silver touched 50-ish, we're literally now in territory that is beyond unsolvable. If we had a chance back then to be able to make amends for our wrongs as far as our abuse of a reserve currency, we are past the point of no return. And that's why this is so different to me, because every one of these fiat notes must be held accountable, will be held accountable in the form of them being forced to find a home, find somewhere that will be considered safe. And so literally we're going to see a race out of the old and into what will definitely be something that will put people in a very different position as far as being able to absorb potential purchasing power. And so literally $50 silver is just the beginning compared to where things have to go, given the debt load and the monetary base having been on a continuous climb since every major crisis that we have. So what this tells me now with $50 silver and $24,000 gold is that we're already in a crisis, but we know we've been in one for quite some time now. It's just been papered over. But yet on the surface, to the average normie who's not tuned into this channel and as well as alternative media space, they're not watching this in concern at all. They're just completely asleep at the wheel. And I'd imagine, I haven't checked this real quick, but let me just check and see what the S&P 500 is doing, because more than likely, if it's in the green, or that's where majority of the wealth has been concentrated to, because that's where we've been steered towards. And so as of right now, as you can see on the screen here, the Magnificent Seven isn't so magnificent right now. NVIDIA is obviously up. So clearly they must got a new injection of capital, some type of investment of some kind. Perhaps, this administration maybe have taken equity in NVIDIA right now. I don't know, you know how they do things, but $50 silver. Yeah. And the debt is continuing to climb. So clearly something has broken, has yet to be revealed above surface, but gold and silver has sniffed it out a long time ago. And it is still early. It is still early. So literally what we were looking at is territory that I never have experienced in total. And it's just the beginning, my good people. So my question is, what are you guys paying attention to? Is this subject matter, gold and silver in particular, of the utmost importance to you, or is there something else out there that perhaps we may not be aware of, or something that really should grab our attention if we were aware of it? So feel free to let me know there. Okay, so what I want to do is get into some other things. And so not only is silver and gold going up, but it says rising tungsten prices worsen oil drillers, inflation worries. So this is an interesting headline that came out yesterday. But when tungsten is surging, we know they use tungsten to make the gold-plated bars, as well as the fake gold and silver coins that is probably flooding the world right now because of the increased demand. But tungsten prices are up, and so let me share with you here just a quick. It says China imposed export controls on 5 critical metals in February. China supplies 83% of global tungsten. It says rising tungsten costs could add $3,000 to $25,000 to oil field drill bit prices, expert says. So literally, U.S. shale drillers are facing higher prices for tungsten, a rare ultra hard metal used for industrial tools like drill bits. And so think about that. Because of China cutting off the world to tungsten, it's causing a surge. So it's going to impact the oil markets. It's going to impact everything that these small little real natural resources that we tend to take for granted or has been suppressed for so long especially those that have been commoditized, i.e., all the things that have the futures contracts associated with them, which has set the spot price for them, and in particular gold and silver, the truth is being revealed. My assumption would be LBMA has lost the ability to deliver physical, so they are literally probably giving up. And then in Crimex is the last line of defense that they would have, and they apparently can't suppress the price long enough or hard enough with the futures contracts. So are the future contracts that have set the price at this current moment null and void? Those are some things that, I guess we're going to find out in the days ahead. And so what I also want to share with you is that not only, let me just share with you, this is a screenshot that, I grabbed earlier. Not only is gold and silver in the gold and green rather, but every other thing listed as a life's necessity that comes from the earth. Platinum, palladium, crude, Brent, natural, heating oil, gasoline, London oil. So you scroll up and down, everything, everything that we need is in the green. So once again, this is the side effects of debt, deficits, and debasement that every nation is feeling. And I haven't, let me just, for the sake of curiosity, now that I am talking, let me just see let me just, how I like to go and take a look at other currencies and look at the inverted version of, let me scroll down and give you a different perspective. So let's just go and let me see if I can just find another currency just for the sake of, let's see. And so this is interesting. This is something that may not be normal. The Swiss franc, which has always been a strong safe haven outside of the dollar. Let me zoom in here if I can. This is what we're looking at. It looks like, according to the chart here, that the Swiss franc, when it comes to silver, its peak was 60.53 Swiss franc, and as of right now, today, it's 40. So when it comes to all-time highs with the Swiss franc priced against silver, it hasn't reached an all-time high yet. So that is definitely an anomaly, I would say. Let's just check out one or two other currencies. Check out the euro. And so we have all-time, and for silver, this goes out just 30 years, but it looks like in the euro, the previous 30-year high was 27.18 because the euro came about in 99. So in 1999, rather, when the euro was introduced, it was €6 for 1 ounce. Fast forward to today, 43.66, all-time high. And so that's made up of a lot of nations, of which majority of people holding on to euros priced in silver are lost big time. And it's just, and literally 50 is just a return to a high for the US dollar. It's important to us because it's a reserve currency, but it's every other currency underneath that, where if I was in those nations, I would be concerned, because if people are losing confidence in a dollar, then hell, they don't give a damn about our currency, relatively speaking. And so those are just things that, like, once again, I'm sure you won't hear that or see that on, any of the, mainstream news channels at all. And let me give you a couple more here, a couple other things that caught my attention. And so, as I mentioned, you can't have a historical day for a metal and there not be some type of information that diverts attention, just for the sake of making sure all angles are covered. Here is an interesting headline that I saw at the same time trending at silver on my news feed. And so here we have U.S. Treasury plans to continue accumulating Bitcoin, Treasury Secretary discussed at a private dinner with Clean Spark executive. So it was a private dinner, but somehow the information got out. The Treasury Secretary is still planning on accumulating Bitcoin. Okay, sure. I'll ride with that. I'll ride with that for people who got exposure to Bitcoin. when they open up the floodgates, you're gonna be liquefied. It just says here, let me give you the rundown for those who may not be aware of this. It says U.S. Secretary Scott Bessent discussed the government's Bitcoin holdings and accumulation strategy during a private dinner with the Clean Spark Executive Order Matthew Schultz. It says, according to the Post from Schultz, the conversation touched on a crypto market structure bill. So this crypto market structure bill will be the true catalyst that sends everything digital to the moon. Every meme, token, NFT, because people have a better understanding as to how the government really will treat the digital asset space, and in particular, how all the bags that they've been accumulating in a variety of projects, how and what they can do with it. Because on top of that, it will also open up a whole new sector of financial products that Wall Street have already prepared for people to be able to take their bags, transfer them to them, either take a loan, sell, buy, trade, earn yield. I mean, it's just the TradFi system has basically merged with the DeFi system, and they're becoming a I'll come up with a phrase, but give me a phrase for the merger of DeFi and TradFi together, as if like it's surprising to somebody. But then again, I'll stop. It says, touch on the market structure of the U.S. economy and the strategic Bitcoin reserve. And so the strategic Bitcoin reserve came up in conversation, and Schultz, the chief executive, decided to divulge that information to the public. And so clearly it wasn't meant to be kept behind closed doors in secret, because it was just one thing, pass that along in an interview. No, just feel free to talk about it, because, that's fine. It's okay. The U.S. has positioned itself as a hub for digital assets. Debasement confirms plans to retain and expand government Bitcoin's holdings amid growing institutional adoption. So Bessent confirmed they won't be selling, but they will be looking to expand. And so that right there is a good way for my algorithm right now to be flooded with digital asset, in particular Bitcoin, news feeds. And so Pricer says, get crazier and crazier by the day, 100%. And then to take it even further, we have a nation state looking like they're getting exposure to Bitcoin as well. And so this is flooding my airways too. Luxembourg claims bragging rights as the first Eurozone nation to invest in Bitcoin. And of course, it came through an ETF, yada, yada, yada. But, these are things that the algorithms are feeding me heavily. But imagine if the algos really gave people a well-rounded or just a diversified approach, or it just could be mine. But I follow a variety of sectors just to stay in tune with things. So let me know what the algos are pumping to you. I'd imagine right now a Google ad that might be playing is probably talking about Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies or some financial product from some investment firm that is now starting a new way to, get crypto faster. You know what I'm saying? I noticed that so much now, because gold and silver, they don't have a real spokesman. There's no real spokesman that is like the Michael Saylor of silver. There's no Michael Saylor of silver. There's no Michael Saylor of gold. Like, Peter Schiff has been a gold guy, and clearly all his predictions and things have been proven to be somewhat correct. And, they are, they're far and few between. So you have to go alternative media to get, a countering narrative to what mainstream would love to just jam down your throat. And so once again, this is what's happening. So I look at it as the difference in perspectives. Eastern hemisphere appears to be heavy gold and silver. Western hemisphere are digital assets. And that's a lot of the distraction and the confusion in promoting propaganda in the midst of a reset. And these are just things that are part of the equation. Puerto Rican, Peter Schiff. Tax haven, Peter Schiff, Puerto Rico. What's this I'm hearing about the Iraqi dinar? I've heard something about the dinar. I don't follow it. Once again, it's another hopeful trade of people having loaded up on the Iraqi dinars in hopes of a revaluation, of which all those future claims will be, I guess, rightfully and justfully, people will be recompensated for their loss and if they held on to the Iraqi dinar. And so, once again, right now, because of the monetary issues we're facing, people are forced to go way out in the risk curve looking for speculative ways to try to triple X, double X, quadruple X their currency. And of course, there will be ways. But then again, you want to find out the easiest way. Keep an eye on this administration and all the advisors around Donald Trump, where they're parking their funds first and foremost. Just like I mentioned the other day with Trilogy Metals. I noticed an uptick in Trilogy's market cap a month in advance. So clearly people knew that Donald Trump was going to sign an executive order authorizing the drilling and all that activity in Alaska. And then they knew that they were going to be taking a equity stake in a mining exploration company known as Trilogy. So you better believe millions were made, but it was made from within the White House first, and then Wall Street second, and the people, you may get some crumbs. Because it's good to say while I'm at it, let me just check and see what Trilogy Metals is doing right now. Because more than likely, it could still be experiencing somewhat of that surge from the other day. And so people might say, well, what are you talking about? I mentioned it yesterday, but you never know who might be new. But Trilogy Metals shares soar over 200% after U.S. takes a stake in the mineral explorer. And so literally, this is what we're looking at. And so to my point about getting inside information and knowing things first. So you go out year to date. So this is what it looks like year to date. But literally, clearly in September, because this is relatively, slowly, incrementally creeping up. So people may have known. There may have been some insiders that have known. You can get a much better position if you'd have bought at $1.29 a share than you would have, say, end of summer when it was $1.60. Get a little bit more bang for your buck. But literally, as of the beginning of September, somebody started putting in bigger. Got to $2, $2.15, $2.10, and then all of a sudden you look up, we get an announcement, which the transaction took place last week. We got the announcement Monday. It went from 208 to 655. And so as of the last 5 days, which is basically this week, it's been hovering around $6.55. So once again, people who had information benefited substantially. So that's just how things work on it when you're on the inside, when you got the plug sitting at the desk with a pen. Yeah. So it's just, interesting times, but we'll see where all this goes. We will see where they take us, because as long as the powers that be are still in position of power, which they are, the swamp isn't drained, the deep state hasn't been exposed, or anybody hasn't gone to jail. And so therefore, the monetary manipulators are still sitting in offices and sky rises, determining how to benefit in this transition. And clearly, I don't think this is accidental. But silver's still in the green, so we'll take it for now. So the question is, what are you going to do as it continues to climb? You're going to take some chips off the table? You're going to take out a loan against it and go get yourself some? I mean, so this is like, it's going to go up forever. But then again, remember, it's going up in something that people don't want anymore. So just the very idea that people are talking about, the government's going to pump Bitcoin to $1 million a coin, then they're going to take the Bitcoin they have, and then they're going to pay off the national debt. How are you going to pay off the national debt if nobody be willing to receive that payment on the other end? Because you think, China's going to want you to hand them $1 trillion or something that they don't want? No. They would take $1 trillion in physical gold, or they probably take for a $500 billion in silver, or anything else that's real from the earth. So the idea of the government paying off the debt with inflating the currency and then trying to use Bitcoin to pay off something, by the time we get to those type of prices and figures, people are going to realize it is the currency all along. Nobody's going to want anything on the international scene associated with USD, whether it's EUSD, digital dollar, Fed coin, stable coin, whatever coin you want to call it. If it's coming from the US, And if it doesn't, make a sound, or if it doesn't put food on table or build things tangible, yeah, people are not going to be willing to accept that. They're not going to be willing to tender that to anybody. So that's just my 2 cents. But you know how I go. I can be far-fetched sometimes. But anyway, just checking in real quick and share my 2 cents on this. This is the beginning of much more exciting events to come. And on top of all that, we still got this stuff happening within the economy, government shutdown, and all that stuff like that, which isn't going away no time soon. But anyway, if you guys enjoyed this, and for the sake of helping get this alternative perspective to more people, if you're on here still, don't be afraid to hit that thumbs up button or check mark, so that the algorithms at least know that some people enjoy getting a contrarian viewpoint on what's really happening. And with that being the case, as always, check the information in the description, some resources, things that, can help protect, preserve everything you work hard for, and be blessed. Shalom.